I love the sewing arts that can be done by hand and machine. Applique is a kind of sewing that continues to be popular, whether the application is done with a sewing machine or a hand needle. The basic method is the same, and the results of each are beautiful. You can choose a method that suits your project and the amount of time you have to devote to it, and you know your finished garment or quilt will be fabulous. Today we'll be talking in my sewing room about applique and other heirloom sewing arts like quilting and embroidery. Thank you for joining me in my sewing room. We are going to have fun. I'm so happy to have as my guest today Mary Warner Stone. Mary is an applique and quilt designer for Presencia Threads USA. Mary, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This is a beautiful, beautiful flower you have here. Now, is that hand applique?
This is hand applique. I use 100% cotton thread to do my hand applique, and I'm going to explain a little bit of what tools I use and the techniques that I use to make applique successful and not intimidating, because a lot of people are intimidated by hand applique.
That is so pretty.
Thank you.
And you're going to show me 1, 2, 3 how to do that. Okay, I like it.
Yes, I am. This is a typical applique pattern, and I trace this applique pattern onto a overlay. Real simple. I just put the overlay onto the paper pattern and trace around with a number 2 pencil.
Just pencil, that's it.
Just
okay,
a pencil,
okay,
yep,
okay.
Just a number 2 pencil. I also number the pieces so that
now
I know.
Why?
Well, there's an order. When you do applique, you have to know what pieces are on the bottom, and then you move up from there. So like this one right here, because it's the very bottom piece of the applique, it's number 1.
Okay.
And then you go to 2, 3, and so on.
Now, when you have your pattern, are those numbers usually on there?
Usually they are, yes.
Okay, on most quilt patterns, okay.
Yep. You choose your applique fabrics and you draw around the freezer paper templates with either a number 2 pencil for light fabrics or a white pencil for the darker fabrics. You put your background fabric down and put your overlay on top, and you position your pieces underneath so that the overlay is a guide to the applique. And again, you have to realize what is number 1, what's the first piece. So that's what you're going to put down first.
Now, did you leave a little seam allowance on each one of those pieces?
Yes,
okay.
There is a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance around each of the freezer paper pieces. And then when you start sewing, I always tell my students that your thread should be about 18 inches long so that you don't have an issue with knotting on the thread. And you always knot the thread as you take it off the spool. Thread has a direction to it, and it's extremely important that you work in the thread, in the direction of the thread. So as you cut the thread, you knot it, and then you thread your needle with the other end, the end that had not been cut.
So go ahead and put the knot as you cut it, where you cut it, okay?
Yep, where you cut it. In needle turn applique, you have to start your knot on the applique piece, and you bring it up through the pencil line, and you actually turn the seam allowance with the needle.
One little piece at a time.
One little piece at a time.
Okay.
Yep. You never want to get ahead of yourself with needle turn applique, because it will, you won't get the nice curves. And there's your first stitch.
Okay.
When you have concave curves, you're always going to want to clip concave curves, whereas convex curves, the rounded part of your curves, you do not have to clip. But your stitches, very simple. I always tell my students if they can bind a quilt, they can do applique.
Okay, and about how far apart are your stitches when you're...
My stitches are usually a scant 1/4 inch. They're not a full 1/4 inch, but they're just slightly smaller.
Well, let me watch you stitch a minute. This is fascinating.
When I go into the background fabric,
okay.
I am right where the thread came out, and then I move underneath with the needle and then come back out at the fold of the fabric. A lot of people question themselves because their stitches show. They don't want their stitches to show. And what's happening is they're taking too much of a bite into the applique piece. So you have to just simply tuck the needle underneath the applique just slightly and then come back up through the fold of the fabric just slightly.
Now talk us through that on the next stitch.
You're going into the background fabric,
okay.
just slightly behind the applique piece.
Okay.
You're going up through the fold of the fabric,
okay.
and just pulling tight, cinching tight. About every third stitch or so, you're going to want to grab a hold of what you just stitched and give it a little tug, and that will cinch down your stitches.
Okay, is there a little trick toward tension when you eventually get the swing of this?
Yes.
Okay.
As you progress in your applique, you'll realize that your tension it comes
just
naturally.
Happens, yeah.
Yes.
Kind of like in smocking, you kind of have to get the feel.
Yes.
Well, that is beautiful.
The more you do it, the better you get.
Practice
and
I
always tell my students it's extremely important not to give up after the first piece. If you don't think you're doing well enough, keep going at it, because it's just one of those things that you learn as you do, and not to get frustrated.
Most sewing is like that, though. Whether it's hand sewing, a little bit of practice. I always tell our students, it's perfect the very first time you do it, because this is the first time, and then go on and practice it till you think it's perfect. Yeah. Mary, that is so beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now Mary has some sewing inspirations to share with you. Mary, these are beautiful. Now, what is this called?
This is called Floral Elegance. It's hand appliqued, and it's a block of the month. There's 9 blocks in the whole thing, plus the border and the applique around the outside.
I think you said hand appliqued, machine quilted, though, didn't you?
Yes, it is machine quilted.
Okay. Oh, look at the beautiful colors. Okay, let's look at this. This is just fascinating to me. Now, what is this?
This is called cassicans. It's hand appliqued as well, and it is called cutaway applique, because you start out, your block is here, and you start out with 2 pieces of fabric that are the same size, and as you're cutting the applique and stitching it down, it reveals the design, which is a lot of fun.
Oh, so pretty. I love the colors.
This is Birds and Branches. Real simple design, really good for the first-time applique artist.
Absolutely beautiful. I especially like the bluebirds.
This I call Back to Baltimore. This I did with machine applique, and I used a rayon thread with the machine applique, and it really gives a nice sheen to the applique.
And an applique stitch on the sewing machine.
It's a buttonhole stitch or blanket stitch on the sewing machine.
And you say this is one of the easier? This is...
For machine applique, it's a pretty simple.
For machine applique. Oh, this is beautiful. Love your colors.
Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Isn't that part of the fun of quilting?
Yes, I love working with color.
Look at this. Oh, this is so pretty.
This is called Candy Lions, and this is named after my youngest daughter, who loves dandelions.
Oh.
And when she was little, she couldn't pronounce dandelions. She only could pronounce candy lions.
What a wonderful name, and what a beautiful quilt. Candy Lions, that's so cute. Oh, wow.
And this is a Lone Star that I worked with a friend of mine on. He did the paper piecing on the star, and then I did the applique, and again, it's with the rayon thread.
A machine applique.
Machine applique.
So you have a variety of machine and hand applique. Well, if Mary can do it, we can too. And now Mary has a So Quick, So Easy project to share with you. Mary, this is fascinating. What on earth do you have in front of you here?
This is a block envelope that we use to store our applique blocks in until we're ready to put them on a quilt. They're real handy because you don't want your applique blocks just laying around or folded up and stuck in a box. I like this
opens
size.
all the way up.
It opens all the way up. And I love the size of this. Typically my hand applique blocks are 14 inches. And this is 14 and a half. And I was having a really hard time finding a box at the store to put my larger blocks in without having to fold them. So I developed this block envelope that's really simple and easy to do. I can pull these together in a couple of hours.
Boy, what a nice gift for a quilter too.
It would be a
All
very
right, show
nice
us the
gift.
trick now.
You start out with your applique or your fabric from the store, and this is 15 1/4 inches wide by the width of the fabric, which is 44 inches. And you simply do your seams across the bottom and up each side. You have one end that's open so that you can turn it right side out. Once you've got it turned right side out, you're going to slip a foam core board, this is 1/4 inch foam core board, into the base of it. You're going to do a seam right along the foam core board, and I use my zipper foot for that seam. And then I go over about 1/2 inch, I do a second seam, slide the foam core board into the opened edge. I flip this, once it's slid in, I simply fold this over and I do a couple more top stitching to finish it off, which is right here. The top stitching right across the top, so you have it all enclosed.
Okay, so there are two sections. You just start at the top, slip it down,
Yes.
sew it
Sew
2 times,
two times,
slip it
slide
in
it in
again.
again. I sew 2 more seams here.
Okay.
I fold this in 1/2 inch to 1 inch is sufficient, and then I do 2 more top stitch seams just to finish it off.
What a fascinating project, and it is easy, but
Very easy.
What a nice thing to have. How many of these do you have, by the way?
I have blocks in about 4 or 5 of them right now, and all my students use them as well.
Well, this is the first time I've ever seen, what do you call it again?
I call it a block
A
envelope.
block envelope. Well, I'm happy to know about a block envelope. Mary, thank you so much.
Thank
This
you.
has just been wonderful. And now I have some heirloom quilting to share with you. I'm so pleased to have as my guest today my dear friend Nina McVeigh. Nina is an educator trainer for Bernina of America. Nina, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha.
And I love what you're going to share with us today on this beautiful quilt.
This square, of course, is a non-traditional square for heirloom sewing, so I'm going to show how to add lace to that square. Again, a rather non-traditional technique.
Okay.
We have different kinds of laces, of course, that we could add to an embellished square like that. I wanted to choose a cotton lace, so I have the option of either choosing a lace I like and adding entredot to the edge of that lace, actually adding it to both sides of that lace, or choosing a lace that already has the entredot on it, and then I have cut away that excess fabric that was there. So I've got my embellished square. I've actually drawn a square, a placement line all the way around that square. So I'm going to go to the machine. I have an edge stitch foot on my machine, and I'm going to use the side of that foot to help me guide this square. I'm going to start in one corner. I am going to miter those corners as I come around. But if I start in this corner, then I don't need to do anything about trying to figure out how to finish those ends. You won't even see those ends. So make sure that when you do start in the corner, that you're starting at least the width of your lace behind that drawn placement line. So I'm going to start right there. And I'm going to lower my foot right next to that lace and kind of reposition it till I get it, the entredot edge right next to that guide on my foot. I have selected a zigzag stitch, of course, and a 1 length and a 2 width, but I might have to play with that a little bit as I get started. I do have a left needle position, 1 or 2 positions to the left. And the idea, of course, is to fall into the hole of the entre-deux with the left swing of the needle and off the fabric, or off the entre-deux onto the fabric with the right swing.
I really love that edge stitching foot. It makes it so easy to go straight.
It's one of my favorites. So again, we'll just quickly run along the side here. And I like to secure that inside edge first, and then I'll come back around and secure the outside edge. But normally with entre-deux, or with heirloom sewing and using entre-deux, you'd be joining something together. Here I'm just laying this on top. Now as I've come to my corner, I'm going to stop and raise my foot, and I'm going to just layer this back. Actually, I think it'll be easier for everyone to see if I take this out. I'm going to fold this back. Oops, I need it to come a little bit further here. And that's how simple it is to miter that corner. Swing it around so it's a 90-degree turn. And I usually do this right here as I'm getting started again. Well, I have a lot of length here that's getting in the way. Okay, there we are. And then come back in. And you could do a little securing right there in the corner, and then get this lined up again with your placement line. And if you've got the settings all correct, you don't have to watch your needle go into every hole. You can be assured that it's going to. We're going to cut that thread right there at the corner, and we would continue around those mitered corners. And as I said, over here, when you get back over here, wherever you are as far as length, you're just going to make a miter and lay it over the top of this one, so that end won't show at all, and then go back around the outside.
I just think this is wonderful. Doing your Swiss lace right on top of your stippling.
Yes.
Absolutely beautiful, Nina. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And now I have some hand embroidery to share with you. I am so pleased to have as my guest today Gloria McKinnon from Australia. Gloria is an internationally known teacher. She's the author of 16 books. For 18 years, she was the presenter of the weekly needlework segment on the Today Show in Australia. She is the editor of many Australian quilting and embroidery magazines and a contributor to So Beautiful magazine. Gloria, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha. Today I'm going to show how we can do one of the easiest flowers in the business. It's called a French knot ribbon rose, and I have a close friend, Kathy, that taught me this, and so I want to thank you, Kathy, for this flower. Now, we can do it in a number of sizes, and Martha, if you would share there, thank you. The small one is done with 4mm silk ribbon, and then the one beside it is in 7mm silk ribbon. Okay. And so that's the two sizes that I've used up there on that quilt. But I've got here where I've done it also. I thought I would show off and do it in 2mm as well, the 2mm silk ribbon there, as we can see when we look at it from here. So this one here has been done with 2mm ribbon, silk ribbon, and this one is the 4mm silk ribbon, and then this one is the 7mm. So with the 7mm, we're going to come up 2 inches, and then we're just going to do a knot. As easy as that. And then with the knot, I'm just going to pull it tight there, and then I'm going to put the needle as close to the knot as I can without piercing the knot. And then I'm just going to gather, just do a running stitch. Now, it doesn't matter if I wobble all over the place. I'm going to try, though, to make all my stitches the same length. That's the only thing, because they form the petals. And so I want my petals to be reasonably similar. And so what I'm doing now is just going down. Now, looking at it, if you're watching me this way and thinking I'm doing this just for the camera, at this angle, it's actually the way I do it at home as well. When I'm doing it on my own work, I like to sit it in front of me and then work so that I go back down and into my work. Not the same hole that I came up, but quite close to that one. And then when I pull it through to the back, is that not just the coolest? See now,
Oh,
look.
it's beautiful.
I just have, and sometimes you do have to just give it a little squiggle with your needle or with an implement that will do it. And so the other part then, if we're going to do it then with the 4mm silk ribbon, then we would come up just 1.5 inches, right? So we'd do the knot 1.5 inches up from there, because this one's going to sit down a little bit closer, and then we would do the same. We would then work as we go back down here really close to the knot, and then a gathering stitch. So what I'm doing is just a repeat of what I did earlier on the 7mm one, and I'm going to go through, and I'm just going to do this one fairly quickly so that you can see there, and I go through to the back and pull this one through to there.
Now, what is this called again?
It's a French knot ribbon rose.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And so if you look at that one, I'm very proud of that one. That one looks really good. And so the next one, though, if in the 2mm, it's really important that you change the needle, because you need a much smaller needle. We're working on now on something that's quite an amount narrower, well, half the amount. And now we want to come up just 1 inch. Well, that inch is a little bit wide, but a bit long. We'll just pretend that's 1 inch. Going to do the same thing again. We're just going to go all the way down. And I know this is repetitive, but I just think that you need to see again. And as I said, I probably would move this to myself a little bit closer if I were doing this on my lap. But I would still have it so that I had my work in front of me and the needle coming down the ribbon this way. There's no other way to make it as easy as this. And then here I go through to the back one more time. See, after seeing it 3 times, then you'll really see how easy it is. But I also wanted to share with you, if you look at this, do you see how I've put the green leaves around it? I think this one and the 3 new ones, look fairly ordinary until we get that green around them. So it's a little bit like when you've got a vase of flowers, and because I'm in America, I should say a vase of flowers. You need to put the leaves, you need some greenery around it, and then already, I just think there's such a difference with this one here. Otherwise, they look a little bit like a blob, and so do add that green there.
Those are beautiful, and they look easy also.
Yes, they
Gloria,
are.
thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Marcia.
And now I'd like to share a piece from my vintage collection with you. There is a sewing detail on this dress I cannot wait to share with you, because you might want to do it too. Let's look at the bodice. It comes down, up and down. You see that, the scalloped edge? This is originally, and I'm going to show you on the bottom of the dress, this is about an 8-inch wide piece of edging, Swiss edging. And the dress is pleated across the front, but you see, you would put this on and then just stitch it down, and it looks as if you have a very complicated bodice. Pretty little long sleeves, but let's go down and look at the skirt, and you're going to see how that top was made. Very narrow tucks, lace insertion. But do you see the edging that was used on the bottom of the dress? It was that edging that was used on the top also. Just a piece was cut, and the bodice was cut out of this. I think that's completely fascinating, and that is a great sewing detail that you might want to make today. If you have, and you know what, even if you didn't have a piece quite this wide, you could even add a strip at the top and have this same, the deep scallops that come down on the top of your dress, looking like you have something real complicated. The dress is really very simple in the back, just a few tucks up in the bodice. Thank you so much for joining me in my sewing room today. I've had a wonderful time, but most importantly, I hope you have. Come back to see me next time.